Hello again. The Church of England Anti-Racism Task Force, and I bet you didn't even know that such a body existed, is to issue a report on April the 22nd, or Stephen Lawrence Day as they call it. Seriously, I had no idea, but apparently April the 22nd is the anniversary of Stephen Lawrence's death, and the church are now celebrating it as though he was one of the early Christian martyrs. On that day, they will issue a report that will announce that in the future, a third of the vicars in England must be African or Caribbean. Put like that, it sounds utterly bizarre, so perhaps I should give a little background information for those who are not up to date with the doings of the Anglican Church. In the description to this video, I provide a link to the Church of England website, which tells us about this new scheme of theirs. Because it is written in an all but incomprehensible jargon and talks of the desire that programme cohorts should have a minimum of 30% UKME participation in order to build up pipeline supply. Pipeline supply? It sounds as though they're working for the bloody gas board. I'll give you the gist of the thing in plain English. As most people in England know, hardly anybody attends church these days, other than old white people and many black people of all ages. Most of the white people attend mainstream churches like the Methodist Church of England, while the majority of the black people prefer evangelical places where they speak in tongues and feel touched by the Holy Spirit. Worship in those churches is often different from that in the Anglican Church, which tends to be a little more sedate. Speaking personally, I see no problem with this. I've attended both types of church and prefer the liturgy of the Anglican Church, although I sometimes worship with the Catholics these days. The Church of England has decided that the lack of black people in their churches, both in the clergy and the congregation, is a problem caused by racism. It can't just be because many black people find their services too dull, of course, and prefer to be a little more unrestrained in their worship. That would be far too simple an explanation. The solution is that the theological colleges which train ministers must, from April, now take a quota of 30%, at least 30%, of black, Asian and minority ethnic students. This is very misleading, and the Church of England knows it. The great majority of Asians in Britain are from Muslim, Hindu and Sikh families. The younger members of those families may not go to mosque or temple, but they are not very likely at all to convert to Christianity. And of those few who do, very few will want to train to be vicars. The same goes for Chinese people, of course, who are also not usually Christians, and also Jews. Now you mention it, if we're thinking about minorities. For people from Africa and the Caribbean, though, Christianity is the default setting for religion. So when the Church of England declares its intention to make sure that 30%, that's almost a third, of students at theological colleges are BAME, they are in effect talking about 30% of students being black. This is about 10 times the proportion of black people in the general population. There are two problems with this scheme. First, of course, the Church is not currently turning away prospective students who wish to train for the ministry on grounds of their race. Quite the opposite, in fact, they welcome anybody, including ethnic minorities, with open arms. Most black Christians attend churches where charisma, in the religious sense, is more important than the finer points of theology. Large numbers of black people are not applying to become Anglican vicars. In fact, the church is desperately short of vicars, and churches are closing because of this shortage. If they start limiting the number of people who can study for the priesthood so that they can maintain this 30% of black applicants, then the Anglican Church will find themselves turning well-qualified applicants away on the grounds that they are white, which would be a bit odd. Another problem, or rather a puzzle, is just why any organisation would be so determined to ensure that it employed a proportion of some group or other at a rate 10 times higher than is found in the general population. So that's about 3% black people in the British population, and they want 30% of black people training to be priests. It's a bit strange. There's a lot more in this report when it comes out about taking down statues in churches which black people might not like and so on. So I'll probably return to this subject in a couple of weeks when the report is actually published.